Hello, everybody. My name is Brian. Working on 30 years of sobriety this year. Yes. Did I have my stumbles? Yes. We say come as you are, and this is how I are. I had to work late tonight, but it's good because I don't want anybody to think, oh, I got to go home and take a shower. Jesus accepts you the way you are. We're going to accept you the same way. The injuries we do to those we suffer, are seldom weighed on the same scales. That's kind of deep right there, bro. It's like somebody hurts us and we want that scale to go, bam, it's bad. But when we do the same thing, we're like, well, it wasn't like that. It's based off of principle 4, openly examine and confess my faults to myself, to God, and to someone I trust. Happier the pure at heart, Matthew 5:8. It's also built off of step 4. We made a searching and fearless moral inventory of ourselves. Let us examine our ways and test them, and let us return to the Lord, Lamentations 3:40. We're going to talk about moral tonight. We said a little bit just now where we begin to examine ourselves. This is where our inventory begins. I tell a lot of people from right here on to the next probably 4 or 5 lessons, it starts to get deep. In step studies, this is normally where we start losing people because it's not none of their fault. I mean, they're not ready. But to get through moral, that's where you start to see your growth and you start to see your progress. The pains of the past cannot be escaped just by overlooking it. And that's what we have a tendency to do. We have a tendency to never say we're healed. We just shove it in a box, we stick it in our closet. But it starts to become different this time because we have God that we can lean on. His Spirit will give you the guidance. Jesus will give you the healing. It's all we have to look at right now. We turn to Jesus for healing. We don't want a Band-Aid. Yeah, we might have a scar, but we want that healing right now. We spend most of our time just trying to rationalize with the past, but we end up complaining about our present, and then we fear about tomorrow. So it's like, all right, we got to make sense of the past. I don't like it right now. I'm going to be scared for tomorrow. It takes up a lot of your time. But we have to start to learn to move forward. Because if we don't, doing that is going to keep you trapped in all the lies that either people said about you or that you actually believe happen and you start to speak over yourself. But once we begin to start to forgive and start to move forward, then we can actually accept God's forgiveness, which is normally the last person, unfortunately, we accept forgiveness from. Because we think we can't forgive ourselves, God can't forgive us. So we start to come clean right here, and it's never easy. We stop and we want to examine and confess our faults, but it's hard because we have to start to accept our responsibilities. Yeah, things have been done to us. That's out of our control. But because of those things that have been done to us, we have responsibilities because we acted in a certain way. But we have to start admitting them to God. And a lot of people says, well, that's easy. But now we're bringing in that other person. We're starting to talk about sponsors. And as I spoke last time, I said, the only difference between a sponsor, we call them in recovery. In church, we call that the prayer team. It's the same people. It's just saved people. But we start with a moral inventory. And this can come easy to some, while others, it takes a lot of time. I talked about being honest last week, and this is where we need to start putting everything into play. The task of putting our list together begins. Our people, places, and things from the past that still trip us up. And I did say places and things. Because for a long time, I couldn't pass in front of a church and not remember Brian at 8 years old and blame that man for all my problems. That church is in my inventory, and that's a place. I talked about things before, how sometimes, I work in an apartment complex. There's a lot of different smells at apartment complexes, and sometimes I'll walk and I will smell something, and I'm not saying it triggers me into a relapse, but that brings back memories. So we always have to be prepared for, you can be walking by and everybody, I'm being honest, everybody knows what that little purple Indian head on the can was used for. I can walk into a customer's apartment and they just sprayed that in there, and that can bring back a memory. I'm not saying a relapse, but it can put me into a dark place because maybe the last time I smelt that, I was in a bad place. So whenever you start to do that, you have to get honest with yourself and you have to start writing these things down. You know, you can just be minding your own business too. You can walk in Walmart and someone can have a chain on, and that little medallion on there could bring back something. I could bring back your grandma had one like that, and you were real close to your grandma. Now all of a sudden the whole grieving process starts over. But we tend to overlook the most obvious, and we only focus on the people. But if we start to take time on them other than places and them things, you're going to see that them people that really, a lot of times, is them places and them things that keep bringing you back. It's not really the people. Because to be honest, by this time in our recovery, we're beyond talking to any of those people. They're not safe for us. So it's not really those people. But if one of those people drives an old Camaro T-top and you see a Camaro T-top, it's going to bring back them memories. So let's take a look at moral tonight. The M stands for make time. First, you need to make time. You need to schedule an appointment for yourself. And that sounds stupid, but I've done it. When it was time for me to do my inventory, I literally sat down with my calendar and the sponsor I had, and I said, we put in a date. And I didn't have nothing written yet, but I said, we're putting a date. So we have to do that. Start to set aside days or weekends to be just you and God. I know that's hard to do, but you have to do that. You know, I tell everybody, don't go into the past without the Spirit. Get yourself in a place where you're calm and you have peace before you start digging up them whole bones in the past. And of course, my buddy Job says, listen to me, keep silence and I will teach you wisdom. You see, sometimes the best thing to do is just keep our mouths shut and just keep everything to ourselves. You know, we all by now have started some type of devotional time. And whenever I say devotional time, there should be a time in your day, morning or night or whenever, where you get in the Word. By now, most of us, you know, we listen to a little praise music or whatever before. Me, it used to be the old stuff, but you know, now I'm listening to more and more godly music. But we get into that, we start reading our devotionals. Some of us listen to podcasts. Some of us, I get up every morning and I leave early because there's just a preacher that preaches. I just like him. I leave early every morning so I can listen to him. But when we're doing all this, we have to ask ourselves, are we really listening to what we're hearing? You know, a lot of times we put on background noise at the house. Me and Sherry do it every night. I run the channels and I'm just looking for background noise because I'm not going to watch what's on TV. But do we do that with our devotional sometimes? Do we put a podcast playing in our ears while we're working and at the end we don't know what we listen to? You know, and I'm guilty. I do it all the time. You need to understand that God speaks to everybody, but He's not going to speak to everybody the same way. Whenever you get into these times of deep prayer, just ask Him to speak to you in a way that you're going to understand. We see that with different types of people, the way they praise in church whenever the worship music is going on. Some people raise their hands. Some people just stand there. It's how you feel. God knows how to talk to you, you know. Just because another person might be falling out on the floor, don't think God's going to skip you over because of that. It don't mean anything. Don't think that because they can pray for 40 minutes over you and lay hands on you and all you can get out is Jesus help me. It's the same prayer. It's the same thing, you know. But whenever we listen to this music, this is a warning I give everybody. When you start shouting this Christian music on the top of your lungs, listen to what you're saying. You know, somebody brought out to me a long time ago, it's like, you know, you were listening to this song, and I'll admit it, yeah, I was listening to some old Motley Crue. He said, do you know what them words really say? And I was like, not really, dude, I just sing them. Well, he pulled out his phone, and he read to me what those words say. And I said, I said, but yet, last Sunday in church, they were singing, hell lost another one, I am free. And I said, your hands was up, and the minute you got outside, you and your wife started arguing. Ain't that the same thing? I'm professing something. So whenever we do that, we have to really start to understand what we are saying, because that's the only way we're going to change and things are going to go forward with us, and God will speak to us through that. I'll get off my soapbox now. Sorry, that's just me. The O is for open. We need to know You know how whenever you go to the door, you go to the store, you stand in front of Walmart and them two big doors, they open up for you automatically, you know. And them doors open wide, and that's why you can pass different size things through it. You know, you could pass a big screen TV or just a little 12-pack of Coca-Cola. That's what we need to start doing with our hearts and our minds. We need to start to open our hearts and minds to where not just the good things can get in, but we can start to allow these bad things to get out. And I know that's hard. It's hard to trust people. But by starting small and maybe giving, talking to people about the little bitty things, you're going to see it gets to a point you can really let these big things go. Because if we don't start to open up our hearts and our minds, denial is going to come right back in. Because denial takes those feelings and it repressed them. It buried them. They don't exist. It took that pain that you felt all the time and it said, that's not pain anymore. A lot of people's heard the expression, I've bit my tongue for so long, I'm starting to get used to the taste of blood. I used to hear that all the time. And it was because I never opened my mouth to say anything. You become accustomed to it. So we have to really watch that right here. Because once you've seen the truth, you need to start to express it, not just to yourself, but to others. Once you find out that the lies that's been told about you and to you are truth, you need to start sharing that. Let me express my anguish. Let me be free to speak out of bitterness out of my soul. Job again. Yeah, I thought it was Job. I was like, wait a minute, that sounds familiar. So what we have to start to do now is we get to this part. We're going to start our inventory. We need to start asking ourselves some questions. This is the part that nobody likes because we have to ask, what do I feel guilty about? I don't feel guilty about nothing, man. I ain't did nothing. All them people did that stuff to me. That's what made me drink. That's what made me do this. No. The first thing that comes out of your mouth is what you need to address first. They say, well, how do I know where to start? The first thing that comes out. That's your main part of your guilt. And you might feel something that's called conviction. Conviction is not a bad word. All conviction really means is that's God opening your eyes and giving you a chance to repent. That's a blessing. Convictions are blessings. And a lot of people tell me, like, man, I got so convicted. I said, dude, God gave you an opportunity to change right there, man. We don't look at that. Romans 8:1 tells us that there is now no condemnation for those that are in Christ. Once we made a decision to ask Jesus into our hearts, once we confess our wrongs, accept Christ's perfect forgiveness, and turn from our sins, as far as God's concerned, guilt's gone. We have no more guilt. Not guilty. You're only guilty of the things you did. You're never guilty of the things others done to you. But what happens is we hold that inside ourselves and we beat ourselves with it over and over and over. Another one that ain't nice. Who do I resent? When you are fresh, I know some people, they're battle depression, they battle anxiety. I can only speak from a substance abuse end. Whenever you are fresh out of addiction and you got like 2 days sobriety, you resent everybody. Your head is starting to clear up. You're starting to remember what all these people said about you. He won't stay clean for 2 weeks. No, I won't, because you done spoke that over me. And that resentment, I'm serious. Resentment results from burying those hurts, though, and they're often repressed. And when we let them out, we let it out in the signs of anger, frustration. That's when your depression kicks in, your anxiety kicks in, and that's when your substance abuse normally picks up a notch. Because all of a sudden, the smoking weed ain't enough. Now I done found pills. Pills ain't enough no more because I'm holding on to all this resentment. I don't want to let it go. Resentment is like picking a scab. The wound will never heal. It's going to leave a scar anyway, but we keep picking it. And every time we pick it, what happens? It bleeds. So it reminds us of the incident that caused it to bleed over and over and over. That just stays stuck in our head. So what do? We put a Band-Aid on it. And the funny thing is, when you pull the Band-Aid off, it hurts just as much as pulling the scab off because you're pulling half the hair with it and everything. But we need to tend to the wound and allow the healing process to happen. And the only thing we can do is by keeping it clean, keeping some kind of medication on it, and giving it time. And whenever you're coming out of any type, fighting depression, yes, you can have Jesus and a therapist. You have medication there. A lot of people come out of substance abuse and they go on Suboxone or something. There's medication there. There's nothing wrong with that because you're letting that wound finally heal. I've asked this in men's classes. What are your fears? I ain't got no fear. I'm a man. Everybody got fears. I seen about, she's a big woman. I seen a mouse this big today. I've never seen that woman move that fast in my life. She is scared to death of rodents. Don't tell me no matter how big you are, you have fear. I went in there and I picked it up. I killed it and I picked it up and I was like, here, you want to see it? And I picked at her because I have that relationship with her. I can do that. And I'm like, look, he's smiling at you, you know. But later, whenever she came to me, you know, she came a little bit later and she was like, what you did wasn't right. But she says, you want to know something? I said, what? She said, I seen another one and I could do nothing but laugh because you was dancing with a mouse in my apartment. So in a weird way, I kind of helped the fear, you know. But having fear is going to keep you buried. My fear was I needed to be a good provider. Failed at that. Needed to be a good husband. Failed at that. I needed to be a good father. I failed at that. Now I have a track record. So everybody's watching. You know, if you have I don't do baseball. Some people do. They write your stats down. I was a statistic. And all I would do is I would just stick it in a box and stick it in the closet. Because fear was preventing me from expressing honesty. And instead of saying things out loud, I would do stupid things with my actions. And that never works out. You know, Joshua 1:19, it tells us, do not be afraid or discouraged, for I am the Lord and with you. I am with you wherever you go. God tells Joshua 3 times right there not to fear. Because fear is in our DNA. It goes all the way back to the beginning. Whenever Eve and Adam ate that apple, it put our fear in us. So fear goes all the way back. But we can't allow that fear to be a factor in anything. You know, I'm not saying you can get over all your fears. I'm not scared of heights. I just don't like them. I fell off of a 3-story roof. That have a tendency to do it to you. If I get more than that high off the ground, I ain't doing it. Simple as that. I fall now, I'm going to break a hip. I'm old, you know. But I don't stop that fear whenever I have to get up on a roof because there's a torn shingle and they got rain coming down in Maman's apartment. I don't let that fear stop me from climbing on the roof. I put my first step on. I'm like, Jesus, help me. If I fall, well, I get a vacation. And I climb up the ladder and I go do what I have to do. You have to slowly work at that. This right here, you get trapped in your self-pity. Always have an alibi. Brian always had an alibi. I probably could have got away with murder back then because everybody would stick up for me. Or dishonest thinking. You know, remember, the truth doesn't change. Just your feelings do. Self-pity only affects you if you allow it to set in. And that's hard not to. But to be honest, most people, they're going to start to avoid you because they see your self-pity. It's not that they don't like you because of the issues you're going through. People just don't want to hear about it. I'm being honest here. And start all of a sudden, man, this guy don't call me no more. That should be a flag to let you know. It's not that he don't love you anymore. Something is up. We fall in that self-pity. Alibis should only be done in a court of law if you didn't do it. Simple as that. Because that goes back to, I wouldn't have done this if they wouldn't have done that to me. That's an alibi right there. You know, dishonest thinking only keeps you in a place where there's no exits. And you just sit there and you wait for someone to come rescue you. And when they get there to rescue you, you say, nah, man, I'm good. Because you're stuck in that dishonest thinking. You don't ever think things are going to change. I talk about Mad Seasons, River of Deceit a lot of times. That was the song that woke me up. When you listen to that song, he's drowning in a river of his own deceit. And it's not that he can't get out the river. He doesn't think he has the will to get out the river. That's what all this does. Dishonest thinking just keeps you there. And once you're tired of swimming and fighting the current, there's only one way, and that's straight down, and you sink. The next letter is R. It is rely. Rely on Jesus. That's hard. How do I rely on Jesus? The easiest way to know you've given something to God and you finally relied on Jesus is when you wake up in one morning and you're like, I hope I don't drink this morning. Man, I hope I don't have a panic attack. That's not the first thing on your mind. Now you know you're relying on God. You're relying on Jesus to do that. Because when you do that, you get the courage and you get the strength and you're able to go into the unknown. Even though everything you have experienced is known, there are still a lot of things that happen behind the scenes that you were unaware of. In signs of abuse, and I know this is hard, and it's not a popular topic to talk about. I was abused growing up. I didn't find out until my older years. I had a parent that was abused growing up. That's all they knew, you know? So it's like all this time I had all this hate, and I'm not saying I was hating the wrong person, but I was hating the wrong person. I should have been more focused on, now I know why they did what they did. Now I can start to heal. But in the same sense, I got some responsibility because I was kind of ugly to that person just thinking they were old bitty, and they weren't. Because Jesus, Isaiah 40:26 tells us that Jesus will give us the strength. He gives strength to the weary and he increases the power of the weak. You can do this with Jesus' help. Once you know the love and the power of Jesus, I'm telling y'all, there's going to be nothing to stop you. There's no fear left. You can get up here and you can just be open and vulnerable and live in a glass house when you get to that point. And it all starts with finding that safe person to talk to. Psalm 31:23 and 24. Oh, love the Lord, all of you who are his people, for the Lord protects those who are loyal to him. So cheer up, take courage if you're depending on the Lord. Remember, courage is not the absence of fear, but the conquering of it. Fear is still there, but your courage is going to let you conquer that. There was a song a while back, I'm a Conqueror. Everybody was playing that song, and it's like, do you realize you're good then? Because you can be scared and still conquer something. We can be stuck in an addiction and still conquer that. We could fight with depression and still go to Walmart. We can have anger and still drive down Ambassador Caffrey. We can conquer that. Doesn't mean any of that's going to go away. But every day we learn little by little easier how to deal with that. Next, we need to analyze. When we need to analyze, we need to get into our past and we need to do it honestly. We need to do this searching and fearless inventory. You got to step out of denial. And even though in a step study, denial was number one, we still go through denial. I still go through it today after being sober for all this time. I still fight denial. I still think that I can hang with these young kids over there whenever they're painting and I can't. But what we do is we end up start to face it because we got to look through the denial of our past, and then you start to see the truth of your present, and you start to see the truths that are in your future. Because you no longer operate on motives and thoughts. You start to walk by that faith, not by sight. Proverbs tells us 20 and 27 that the Lord gave us mind and conscience we cannot hide from ourselves. You may be able to hide from yourself, but you can't hide from God. He already knows. He knows what you did. It's not like he's going to be surprised. You know, go back to the Garden of Eden. Where are you? He already knew where Adam was. He already knew what he did. He already knew what Brian did. He already knew all that stuff. All I had to do was to come into agreement with him and say, all right, I know you know that. Where do we go from here? Bless you. Where do we start to go? And, you know, y'all know how my brain works. I have a problem with this because I analyze everything. I people watch. That's how I am. I remember the smallest details. And I also, and I joke about this, I said I have the ability to read a post on Facebook that offends me and scroll. That's hard to get. But whenever you analyze, when I started to analyze myself, that wasn't easy. You know, you start to get poked and prodded. And when I think of that, it brings back of going to the doctor. You never run into your doctor uptown and just say, hey, how's it going? And talk to him like a friend. No, every time you see a doctor, they want blood work. They want x-rays. You in the hospital. You don't have, it's like your dentist. You see your dentist when you have to. You don't go play pickleball with him. You don't hang out with him. But the minute you need help and you need that prescription, who do you go? You go see that doctor. We need to learn whenever we need our help, we need to go to God. We need to focus everything up. Your anger, focus that up to him. You mad at somebody? Scream at God. Go read Job. Job done it. If Job done it, he was a righteous man. We can do it also. So whenever you analyze yourself and we get as close as to that, then we can have that one shot and you kind of immunize from it. It's like, all right, I ain't going to hurt no more. You know, whenever I walk in that house and I smell that stuff, it's not going to bother me anymore. But it doesn't come as easy to everyone, because you may be a people avoider. I know a lot of people, they say, oh, I love the big churches. I'm like, really? He says, yeah, because I never sit by the same person twice. I never go in through the same door the same way. And I never sit in the same place twice. And I don't know nobody's name. Some people like that. They avoid that. You know, how many times somebody asks you what you had for lunch yesterday and you can't remember? Guilty. Happens to me. So, but that analyzing, whenever you underanalyze, that happens, and whenever you over. So we have to find a happy balance of that. And the only way to find a happy balance is whenever you notice something you did wrong, automatically start to think of something you did good. You know, yeah, I cut that woman off. She deserved it. But then when I got to Walmart, I held the door open for that lady, or I grabbed that lady a cart. And it's not that I was doing penance, but I felt better about myself. It was like, look, you can be this person, Brian. You just need to learn to do it. Oh, the next one is L is list. We have to write our inventory. And everybody's like, why we got to write it down? CR and AA and NA says, oh, so you can keep it balanced. You know, you, like I said, you don't think no good coming out the past. You know why you write your inventory down? Because 5, 6, 7 years down the road, when something's going to pop up and you haven't looked at it, like we never do, because we never call our sponsor when something happens, we wait. You can open up your inventory and you can read and say, man, 5 years ago, I haven't thought about that since I've done this inventory. You see growth. That's the main reason to write it down. You know, you start to see that the bad things that happened to you, all the good that came out. When I was younger, I was punished a lot. I spent a lot of days stuck in the house, sometimes just for breathing too loud. I don't like I'm serious. I don't like the noise coming out your mouth. I'm like, I got a head cold and I have a whistle in my sinuses when I go to your room. So I was stuck in there. We all know, whenever you were sick, what is it? The Price is Right, chicken soup, and Tang. So it's like, that's what I had when I was sick. You sat down and mama would watch whatever, soap operas or whatever. But by being stuck in that house all the time, mama cooked. And I didn't stand over the stove and say, how did you do that? I heard the sounds. I smelt how it was. And now, whenever we have a function here, because of that, I can cook for 30, 40 people. So something good came out of that. So whenever I go back to that time and I say, yeah, that was horrible, but man, that roast is on good, huh? You know, and I always say that, you know, and they tell me, oh man, where'd you learn to cook? Oh, there's a lot of abuse in that food right there. And they laugh about it, but I'm like, no, that is the good of my story. But writing it down, it also helps you see your past in black and white, or blue or green or whatever color you want to do, but you get to see it. And you see how some of your old character defects just repeat themselves, line after line after line. And it's like that country song, I might be the problem. Yeah, I am the problem. You know, but you start to see that, and then you can tell yourself that. And it's easier for you to come to admittance to yourself and notice that maybe you're the problem than everybody telling you got a problem. People used to say all the time, you know, that boy drinks. I was 13, 14 years old, and I would go into Negs and I would drink them big old men under the bar. And they were like, man, that dude, he's in denial. No, I knew I had a problem. The denial I was in, I didn't want to admit would put me there. So we have to watch that. And we always keep going back to denial because it pops up. You know, inventory is hard. When we get there, you're going to have a farm. It's got all these little boxes. This is how I'm going to do inventory. I'm going to take that farm and I'm going to rip it up and I'm going to throw it on the floor. You tell your story. I've done inventories with people where they just had names listed. And it was like, let me tell you about my Nonk Dallas. And they would tell me the story. It's better than just reading off a checklist. They could get more out. They had more time. I'm not telling you to do that because I'm a spreadsheet person. My inventory is like 20 spreadsheets long. I did that. But in the beginning, it's hard to do it because what you're dealing with anger, you're dealing with hurt, you're dealing with all that list from earlier. I started writing a book 10 years ago. My Life Sucks. That was my title. And I started to write a book. And I went back as far as I could remember, back to kindergarten. Whenever as a kid, they would say, you know, they're going to come and get you. And all of a sudden, you give me to a stranger on the bus. And I'm like, damn, they did come and get me. You know? So I went all the way back to that. And I started to write a book. And there's some colorful language in there because whenever I started that, I'm not who I am now. And I've left it in that book. I'm not going to go back and Jesus it up. But when I sit down and I thumb through that book, that's me looking at my inventory. If that's what it takes, do it. It costs you $5 to publish a book. That's what it cost me. It cost me $5 and what, 25 cents for a book. But I can hold my inventory now in that form. Something to think about. Lamentations, we said this earlier, let us examine our ways and test them. But the verse don't say just examine your bad and negative ways. This is where we need to keep it honest and we have to do a pros and cons. If you're going to do a spreadsheet type inventory or you're going to follow that thing, I want you to add 2 columns to it and I want you to put pros and cons. You know, yes, this happened to Brian. But man, that roast does taste good. That's a pro from it. And when you start doing that, you're going to see the stuff that happened to you. That's who makes you who you are now. Because your inventory, that's who you were then. Your sponsor, I know most of y'all have done inventories before, like Ethel, you've done an inventory. Your sponsor didn't see you 10 years ago. Your sponsor saw you for who you are now and then saw what you went through. So if anything, you gave a testimony of your life to your sponsor. You helped that person more than they helped you because you're getting it off your chest. And the pros and the cons will do that. And I've seen time and time again, that's what happens whenever we do our inventory. They don't want to look at the pros, they only look at the cons, and then we end up losing over half the class. And that's fine because most of them come back and they say, I want to do it again. Do you have a sponsor? Yeah. At class setting, it's not for you, bro. Go do it one-on-one with your sponsor. Oh, well, CR says, I'm like, whoa, whose healing is this? Is this your healing or Saddleback's healing? If you want to do it one-on-one with your sponsor, I'm going to go back and tell you like you told me with AA. AA got you to quit drinking. Now you want to find Jesus. You worked one-on-one with your sponsor in AA. Do it now. And those people were successful. They finished the course. But don't start doing it without a sponsor or your safe person. You know, you need someone you can trust, someone who's going to keep everything balanced, especially during this step. But again, they're not going to do the work for you. I've had people that I gave them the books. I told them we could meet. And they just started doing it. I'm like, walk it, bruh. Do it. Because some people, that's how it has to be. They don't want to be in a group. They don't want to tell everybody. You know, especially with men. Men, we just rub dirt on that. We don't bleed. That's some man juice coming out. We don't bleed. We have to be tough. But we start to get things, we start to dig deeper once we can get these little things out. And digging will become a daily thing, but the reward you're going to start to see is kind of like them scales. It's going to start to outweigh. These are going to be your rewards. Your rewards are slowly coming up. And all that pain that's dragging you down, it's lifting them rewards up. So you're not worried about them anymore because you're only starting to look at the good stuff. You know, inventories are not easy, but they're necessary. AA, NA, CR. People go to therapists. Therapists going to give you a piece of paper and say, hey, get you a notebook and fill this out. That's an inventory. It's just on a different scale. That's all that is. But it's a form and a process that's going to help you move on. It's going to give you the short-term relief because now you found somebody you can talk to, but it's going to give you that opportunity to start moving. Next couple of lessons, like I said in the beginning, we're going to have some inventory worksheets over there. But again, I don't want y'all to see this and say, I got to do this now. Can you start on them? Yes, I would start on them. Do I have to check every box? No, you don't have to. If that's not you, that's not you. You know, the main thing about an inventory is your inventory becomes your testimony. The more you're wanting to give up, it's the more you're willing to give back. So nobody can tell you how to do an inventory. Nobody. They can't say, well, you have to do it this way. That's not my way of doing it. And I get in trouble all the time, and I have sponsors call me up. What you mean he don't have to fill out them boxes? He don't have to. You got to remember one thing. As a sponsor, you can be fired. Yes, I have been. Because we got in an argument over an inventory. You know, I'm like, I don't care how you do it, but you have to do it. I don't have to do nothing. He fired. Well, I don't need you. Good. Because this is the most important step. This is like waiting in line at McDonald's for 5 hours and you finally got to the window and they give you them fries and there ain't no salt on them. Ain't nothing burns me up than that. That's what you just did. So you all the work you did, you just threw away. I'm going to leave y'all with this. I want y'all to get with God when y'all start to see these papers. Get with Him first. He's going to guide you to a sponsor. Sponsors aren't lifetime. I've had people pick up a sponsor just to get through a step study and then hook up with somebody 3 or 4 years down the road, and they clicked. But get with God first. God is the only one that can find who's right for you. And that is moral, everyone.